survey, because I did want to, in effect, compare apples and apples, and I just wanted to show that the satisfaction metrics that the Met uses anyway, and those of you in the Met will know that particularly the screened out crime, particularly the body crime reporting. I just wanted to see where that difference lay. As always with telephone surveys, and particularly around telephone surveys, the survey responses weren't massively great, but actually I was reasonably satisfied with between 35 and 40% response rate. That was proposed for extremely control. So we had enough numbers to be able to conduct some analysis. And as a result of that, we analysed them descriptively. We looked at statistical significance of key tests and the magnitude of the difference. And it was done on an intention to treat basis. So even if treatment didn't take place, the call didn't go in, they were lumped into that group as well to make sure that. And those satisfaction questions, I do have them, they are in the main document, but they also covered sort of, has your opinion of the police changed, or how's the satisfaction with specific crime, sort of wider questions around their experience of policing as well. And the results were then analysed, and it came out, and they were quite surprising, to be perfectly honest. So, as you can see here, quite clearly, there was, in most of the metrics, quite a statistically significant difference in terms of cycle theft, with in some cases satisfaction improving by 15% in some of the metrics, particularly around the being informed, kept updated, and treatment. And in fact, with the exception of the reporting process, which didn't really come into this experiment, we saw differences, positive differences for cycle theft victims across all the other metrics that went on.
Ben, can you explain that table?
Of course I can. Thank you. So what we're looking at there is in this table is the differences between the control group and the treatment group. So where we see it moving to the right across the side, that is where the treatment group have an increased satisfaction level compared to the control group. The 90% confidence interval, slightly different to the standard, but essentially it's saying I am 90% sure that this didn't occur by accident. This actually was as a result of the treatment. Actually, we're 90% sure of something, we're 90% sure it's going to be effective. That's good enough for me, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Looking to the left-hand column, that's vehicle crime. And interestingly enough, you see where the bars are. That's essentially, we look at everything across the bar to see whether it makes a difference. The vertical line is the 0% difference. I cannot say the same positive response for vehicle crime as I could for cycle theft. Why is that? We're not entirely sure, but I would suspect it's probably to do with whether the service meets expectations, and that would seem to make sense when you look at some of the experiences of victims. Anybody had their bike stolen? I know one person in particular. He had 17 superintendents hunting Cambridge with a stolen bike. Still didn't find it, just goes to show what goes on. But actually, do you expect to get your bike back? Most people don't. Most people expect to get a crime reference number. Most people expect then to claim insurance to buy a new bike. So actually, when they get a phone call from a police officer saying, I've read your crime report, I'm really sorry about it, we will try and do what we can about it, that probably exceeds the expectations that they have preconceived in their mind. Can't prove that, but that's what we think is going on. Conversely, with vehicle crime, when we think about it, previously government has said vehicle crime is a priority, as we focus on that, registration-based CCTV, for everybody their car is probably their second most expensive purchase they make in their life. Maybe the expectations of what they think the police are going to do around their crime are different. And therefore, a phone call going in saying, I'm really sorry, we'll try and look at it, probably might not have the impact that we would have expected around that. So that probably needs a little bit of further research. But also, when we looked at the figures here, and I'm going to put a big caveat on that once we start drilling down into things like demographics and other bits and pieces, that the sample sizes get quite small, but there were some promising differences. I did look in terms of gender, race, age, repeat victims, and as I said, with the caveat that they are small subgroup sizes, so it needs probably a bigger sample to properly evaluate it. But there were some real interesting differences. So in some cases, for BME victims of cycle theft, the improvement in satisfaction from white victims being at about 15%, it went up to 25 to 30% for BME victims. And I think that's really promising. If somebody wants to try and do some more research around that to see if that is true, that would be really appreciated. A colleague of mine, Jim McKee in the Met, he did replicate this experiment that I did, and he saw similar figures in terms of those minority groups, in terms of those are the ones who actually we really should be focusing in on in terms of community satisfaction with policing. So again, Jim's results again put the caveat on that once you get down to the small sizes, it needs to be really more focused. So what are the implications for us then? Well, do you know what? It was a 10-minute phone call, and that was when the victim was talking a lot. I think the average phone call length was about 2 minutes. We used officers who weren't operational, we used staff members who weren't operational, and it's a pretty simple process. And in fact, on a couple of the wards in London where they've looked at this, they've actually now getting their PCSOs just to do a quick phone call in for any victim of crime that's happened on their ward to see if that happens. So that's not being evaluated properly, but it just shows it can be done quite quickly. As Alex says, anyone can do this. A real chance to close satisfaction gaps. Certainly in the Met, we have significant satisfaction gaps between female-male victims, white victims, BME victims, and also satisfaction gaps in terms of age. Young people are less likely to be satisfied with the response than older people. And that just shows that there is that potential chance. The key takeaway for me, however, is actually one size doesn't fit all in terms of how we respond to victims and how we approach things. And to be perfectly honest, we need to replicate and do further research to see actually which crimes could a quick call like this make a real difference for, and which ones actually should we have maybe a more focused approach, maybe personal visits, or indeed not at all. And that is where further research is needed. So to take Rachel's in, this is promising. However, we're going to need to do some more to see exactly what works in relation to it. The experiment itself, I would suggest it took, as I say, no more than 10 weeks from data collection points, and then about 4 weeks of analysis that took place afterwards before we started getting some results. So in terms of that sort of side of things, it's actually quite quick to see what was going on. And I was sort of analysing the results as they came in from the surveys and other bits and pieces, and it was quite clear quite quickly that there was some really good stuff going on there. As well as that, some of the other takeaways as well was every week or two sitting down with the staff and the officers who were involved in the phone calls and the surveys as well, having that feedback loop just to see what was working in terms of the experiment, what wasn't working, where could we tweak things, and there were really a good couple of suggestions that were put in place from the officers themselves who were really bought in and involved in this to improve it. So, for example, we wanted, in terms of the surveys, one officer really wanted to keep trying back with particular groups of victims to make sure that we got hold of them, and we built that into the plan. Having a local lead around it was really good with the 2 different boroughs, and again, both of them almost got into competition in terms of making sure that they have the best response rates for the surveys and other bits and pieces. And again, that was part of the feedback that was put in place. So what did I do with it? What's the legacy? Well, I was really fortunate to be able to present to the Met Victims Board, and we took some of that away. And as a result, Jim McKee took that forward to our main crime reporting information bureau to replicate the survey. And we're showing that evidence base is starting to be built up. So that's pretty much where we are in terms of it. I'm happy to take questions around it. If anybody has.